This week on ICN, the stories you should have heard but didn't. The Federal Reserve modifying mortgages to avoid foreclosures. Wall Street thugs throwing their weight around. Civil unrest continues to grow around the world. Homeland Security arresting terrorists and keeping the skies safe for us. Those stories and more next on Informed Citizen News. Hello, and welcome to ICN, Informed Citizen News, February 1st, 2009. Our lead story is the economy. As part of its rescue last year of Bear Stearns and AIG, the Federal Reserve is sitting on a bunch of toxic mortgage debt. The Fed will look into modifying delinquent home loans on its books in hopes of heading off foreclosure. We don't know where to begin to comment on this story. First of all, when the Federal Reserve first took on these assets last year, they said that they were good assets and would be able to sell them for a profit in the future. Now they're telling us, not to our surprise, that these loans are not performing and need to be modified in order to salvage some value. Second, the Fed will also need to set a threshold for who qualifies for a loan modification. Those borrowers falling short of qualifying will do everything to make sure that they do qualify, like stop making loan payments, have a spouse reduce their income, etc. And lastly, ICN did a story in December on redefaults. Even if you modify the terms on a borrower to reduce their payments, more than 50% end up in redefault within 6 months after their second chance. The Federal Reserve is going through the motions for good PR, but it's way too little and much too late. Wall Street is notorious for throwing their weight around. They're powerful when they make a lot of money, and they seem to be even more powerful when they lose a lot of money because they're too big to fail. This week, we learned that Bank of America met with Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson in December and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. They threatened that if he didn't give Bank of America another TARP bailout, they'd abandon the Merrill Lynch deal and cripple the financial system. Suffice to say, Bank of America got your money. Here's another fraud scandal that's brewing. While investigators were probing how Treasury regulators allowed a bank to falsify financial records, hiding its ill health, they found at least 3 other instances of similar apparent fraud. The government, our government, is helping banks cook the books, making it appear that the bank had more deposits than it really did. This story is breaking this week, and we expect more to come. A sobering article on our financial collapse appeared in the London Times this week. The article was titled, "World Agenda: Riots in Iceland, Latvia, and Bulgaria are a sign of the things to come." Iceland's government fell due to the financial crisis, and with civil unrest hotspots flaring up all around the world, we are seeing protests in countries not known as protest cultures. The London Times goes on to ask, why hasn't a single politician resigned? What has happened to ministerial responsibility? Who will investigate government failure? Good questions. The answer is simple. The citizens ultimately run these governments, and we are in this mess because we don't educate ourselves and hold politicians to account. Here's a story that's not received enough attention in the press. Did you know that since 9/11, over 200 people have been arrested for committing acts of terrorism while flying on U.S. commercial airlines? These people were convicted of felonies under the laws of the Patriot Act. Did they attempt to hijack a plane or attack the flight crew? Many simply involved raised voices, used foul language, or overused their drink coupons. Some of the convicted terrorists include moms who spanked their children, kissing couples, and stressed travelers. I kid you not. We're against unruly behavior on flights as much as the next guy, but come on. Charging these people as terrorists under the Patriot Act is ridiculous. Just charge them with public nuisance and be done with it. Speaking of Homeland Security, there was a report this week of odd activities outside Tucson, Arizona. A Blackwater-type company by the name of Wackenhut has a prison bus facility in the desert. These buses seem to go out on training runs at all hours of the night, but never seem to go out on actual prison transfer jobs. There is a Homeland Security prison nearby in Florence, Arizona that may be connected, but one never knows. We're sure there's some reasonable explanation for this, much like the notorious YouTube video on FEMA coffins. There's a disturbing story out of Moscow this week where 2 people were gunned down in public. It's more accurate to say that these 2 people were assassinated. The victims were Anastasia Barbarova, a Russian journalist, and Stanislav Markelov, a human rights attorney. Their work was often critical of the Russian government. The assassin walked up from behind wearing a ski mask and shot both in broad daylight in front of hundreds of witnesses. No investigative journalist or human rights activist is safe in Russia, no matter what the cause. 15 journalists and human rights workers have been murdered in Russia since the year 2000. The victims were targeted for exposing local corruption as well as documenting human rights abuses. Anastasia Barbarova was 25 years old and Stanislav Markelov was 34. There's a special place for those who take on personal risk to battle evil. The following quote from the movie Pulp Fiction seems most appropriate. In our final story, Americans can be rest assured that our Defense Department does not put out propaganda. The Pentagon was accused of violating a ban on domestic propaganda by using retired military officers to comment positively about the war in Iraq in the U.S. media. These retired officers also had conflicts of interest, as most received compensation from military contractors. But no worries. A Department of Defense internal investigation has cleared the Pentagon of violating a ban on domestic propaganda. Let's see. The accused is responsible to determine their own guilt or innocence? Thank you for joining ICN this week. We're not here to entertain, but to inform. Please send our link to your friends and family. From all of us at Informed Citizen News, we'll see you next week.